HBS show with lesson the screen goddess. History behind success of your role model.
It is HBS show, History Behind Success. The story of my guest today will inspire you. Is a man who has imparted in the life of people, especially the youth. The man who made the youth to see reason to live a good life. A man who sees everybody to be equal. He's a very handsome man, a father, and also he is a pastor. He has mentored a lot of people. Who is this man? Join me as I make welcome to the program, Pastor Sonny Ogbogu Daddy.
It's the HBS show with lesson the screen goddess. History behind success of your role model.
Sir, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You're looking so handsome. What's the secret?
Thank God he's God and then my wife.
Wow. So tell us, how was it growing up like?
I was born in Calabar. Then from Calabar, we moved to Port Harcourt. We were in Port Harcourt when the war broke out. Then from Port Harcourt, we were moved to Lagos, evacuated to Lagos. And eventually, we ended up in Sapele because of my dad's work. As of then, my daddy was working with Nigerian Marketing Produce Company. That's the company that sells Nigeria's grain products to the outside world. So we relocated to Sapele. Then from Sapele, that was where I started my primary school. Because I started before the war. So I now started again in Sapele, in Ogbanja Primary School. Then in Sapele. Then from Sapele, when my dad was transferred to Port Harcourt, we moved with him to Port Harcourt. From Port Harcourt again, we ended up in Calabar. That was where he retired. Then when he retired, we moved to Asaba, where I completed my primary school. Then after the primary school, I went to SPC, that's St. Patrick's College here in Asaba. Because my father is the type of person that he wants every one of us to feel the touch of the town, because we're always outside. So I did my secondary school in SPC, completed. Then my higher education, I did 1 year in Federal School of Arts and Science, Victoria Island, Lagos. Then from there I proceeded to Bauchi, where I did my diploma course. And after that, I went to University of Jos, where I completed my degree program. During my secondary school days, it was not easy, especially during the classroom hours, because I was an ardent stammerer. I caught my stammering from my nanny who carried me when I was young, the nanny my mom had then. You learn from the person who you are closest to. So she stammered, so I picked up stammering from her. So most of the time when questions are asked in the class, and they ask me to read, the whole class will start sleeping. Because it will take me time before I talk. I will keep tapping the floor, tapping my body. But when I was in class 2, the food prefect then, I had a fight with somebody, because stammerers are the type of people when they realize that you can't talk, somebody wants to, anytime you are talking, he interjects to stop you, because you have programmed yourself to talk so fast. So immediately he interjects you can't talk again. So then the only way we explain ourselves is with our fists. So we had to learn how to fight, so that because we know at the end, when they call you to explain, you cannot explain, they will punish you. They say that's why you don't want to talk, because you are the one that did wrong. So one day that same thing happened. I had a challenge with somebody where we were eating and we fought. So at the end, they carried both of us. The food prefect took both of us to his cubicle and started asking us what happened that made us to fight, because definitely we were to be punished. So when he saw that I couldn't talk, he sent the other person away. So when he sent the other person away, I felt, he now wants to punish me. But he did something surprising. He brought out his food, gave me a spoon, and asked me to join him and eat. I was afraid because then secondary school was not like this time. The seniors are regarded as lords. You step on them, they break you. So he said he encouraged me, and I was eating. He told me he was going to ask me certain things. And when he asked me, he said, before I talk, I should breathe in. That it will make it easy for me to talk. So I said, okay. So he started asking me what happened. He said I should make my sentences short, not so long. So anytime he asks me, I will breathe in, I will talk, I'll breathe in. So at the end, when we finished the food, he said he too was a stammerer, that somebody taught him, gave him this code, and today he can talk very well. Say, if I'm able to carry on with it, before I know it, I'll be talking well. So I said, okay. So from that day, each time I'm talking with my friends, before I talk, I breathe in. And you that is talking with me, you will see it so visible. So it got to a time, each time I want to talk, all my friends will breathe in. So I became so embarrassed that I stopped. I went to the senior again. I told him, I said, look at what is happening, that I can't continue, that people are mocking me. He said, continue. He said, you are doing it now because you just started it. That the time will come, you do it unconsciously, without noticing it. It will not be visible. So I said, okay, and I continued. And it got to a time I didn't know when
You stopped.
I stopped. The only time I stammer is when I get angry. Because they say anger is a temporary state of madness. So when you lose the codes, you lose the instruction that you have been given, and you see yourself struggling to talk. So secondary school was, then from my class 2, class 3 it became a little bit easy for me, because when I was in school, especially the class 1, I grew up faster than my mates. I was taller than most of my mates. So there was even sometimes that I punish my seniors, the class 2 students or class 3 students, without them knowing that I'm a class 1. So there was a time I punished somebody that was in class 3. So he was playing table tennis. Normally when you are playing tennis and a senior comes, you will stop and ask the senior if he wants to play. If he says no, you continue. So I came that day, they were playing, they ignored me, maybe because all of us were wearing shorts. So immediately I shouted, I said, you mean you are playing table tennis while I'm here? So immediately they stopped and they began to plead with me. So I said, okay, for that, lie down, give me the bat. They gave me the bat. I told them to lie down. So they lie down there, and I started playing with my friend that was with me. So as I was playing, one class 3 boy was passing and saw his mates lying down. He couldn't see any senior around that maybe that must happen. So he did him like, he said, but what is happening? He saw it, he pointed at me, he said, this senior is the one that happened. He said, who's senior? He said, this one. And the class 3 boy is in my dormitory. So immediately he said, he started, that class 1 boy. The boy didn't know how he jumped. It was like he was on a spring. He jumped from the ground, pounced on me. He will kick me. He will punch me. In fact, he will tell me, "Hey, lie down, lie." He say, "Roll." He say, "Get up." Somersault. In fact, it made me to do everything. So that was it. But when I became a senior, I was into majorly sports, because how I delved into sport was, I think it was in my class 1, class 2. In the morning when we were preparing for sports, we go for cross country. We go outside the school, the games prefect and some seniors, they take us to run around some parts of the town, close to Ghana, and come back. But when we come back, they will make us to run, the SPC field, around the field for about 2-3 times, so that we can start to exercise. You go to your various areas of interest. So, but each time we come back, I'm so tired. It will be as if my heart wants to burst. So I will quietly dive into the field and lie down, so that nobody will notice that I'm there. On this particular day, I didn't know that the games prefect saw me, and he came with his big cane, water cane. He started flogging me. He said, others will run around 2 or 3 times, but you will run around 12 times. I told him, I said, senior, I will die. He said, yes, it's better you are dead than you lie down in the field. So he chased me around the field, and as he was chasing me, I was screaming, I was shouting, senior, I'm tired, I feel like dying. He said, you will die today. So what, at the end of it, he chased me around that field for 12 solid times. And I looked at myself.
You're still alive.
I'm still alive. So I began to ask myself, so you mean I have this strength in me and I don't know it? From then on, I began to train on my own. When people don't come out, I'll go to track. I started training on my own because I looked at myself. This is lazy me that didn't know I had this inner ability, strength. So I began to train and I started utilizing it. I also went into other various areas of sports. It's just that as of then, the government was not encouraging people. You do it at the detriment of your education. Oh. And my father was not the type that will allow you to just follow sports and leave education.
Okay. So during your university days, I know there are some times that there was no food to eat. Things were very tough.
Yes.
How did you maneuver?
Well, like you said, there are times there was no food. There was a particular day, that one I cannot easily forget it. There was no food. The only thing I had in my house was onions. So I decided to cut the onions and eat. At least
as food.
As food. So I cut it, not realizing that maybe I would have washed it with salt to reduce the acidic content. I ate it like that. And I had the worst time in my life. My stomach was as if fire was inside. I started taking a lot of water and so on. That was how it subsided. But sometimes we trade so that we can get money and then be able to carry on in school. But when we don't have, we always have these friends. We know there are some friends we have that they buy things in excess. So we go to them. Sometimes we move from one person to the other so that you don't overeat from somebody before it starts complaining.
Maybe running shift.
Exactly. So then there are times too, especially when I was in Federal Polytechnic Bauchi. I had this friend who came and told me, said that let's go into people's farm to get things. I told him I won't go. He said no. He said the farmers don't harvest everything. That like beans, when they finish harvest, he said you can pick some beans. If it's maize also, you can pick. So he took me to a farm and we saw that they had finished harvesting, but we could still see some little beans. We started picking. By the time we finished picking, we got about half a bucket. By the time we started opening, the same thing with maize. We could get maize, and maize, when you take it and pound it or grind it, you can use it as fufu. They don't farm cassava so much, so it's majorly grains. So by so doing, we'll have something to eat. Like rice. If we have rice, we might not have stew. We look for somebody who has something like milk. If he has milk, we can eat rice and milk.
Yes. Rice and milk.
Rice and milk. Once you boil it very well, it's soft. It's like quick out. So that's how we were able to manage polytechnic days. It was tough because the money we were getting then was not enough to sustain us, especially for the kind of life we were living. We were not living an average school life. We wanted to live above the average. I was not living, it was only my first semester that I stayed within the campus.
Okay.
From second semester, I lived off campus, and when you're living off campus, you're paying house rent.
Big boy.
You're big boy. You want to meet up. So that was why the excesses were there. So we had to look for ways to get money. But thank God we didn't go into stealing. Because that is why we had a lot of people who has called people to go out, tell you, come and do this. I said no. Because I was always afraid if I'm caught, what will my father do?
After your graduation from the University of Jos, so how did you start life?
Well, it was not easy. My father died when I was in my final year. So when we came out, my mother had also retired as a school teacher, secondary school teacher. So we had to start managing with what we had. Luckily, when I was in school, in the university, I had a barbing salon. So when I graduated, after I graduated, I couldn't start off immediately with the barbing salon outside because I was looking for something bigger. So I went over to Lagos, where I had a cousin of mine who was into building. So I started with him. He would give me some supplies to supply granite, supply sand. So I was doing it. But at the end of the month, I couldn't see any savings. Lagos was so expensive that I couldn't make enough saving. Although then I was also helping somebody out in the university then. So while I was there working, I got a call from my in-law, who is a medical doctor in Kaduna. He runs a hospital, specialist hospital. So he said that he has this business, he has consultancy with them, NNPC in Kaduna. That I should come and help him out, that they want him to also start doing contracts with them. So joyfully, I left Lagos and went to Kaduna. But I spent almost 1 year in Kaduna. Nothing came out of it. The business did not take off. I was there every day, nothing coming up. So one day, I just decided on my own to move out of Kaduna and come to Asaba. Though from Kaduna, I was doing a little business then. I was into clothing. I'll go to Aba, buy clothes, make clothes, then carry them, supply. I do that every 2 weeks. I go back, I pick up my profit from the sell points, then go back to Aba every 2 weeks. But at a point, those that were collecting from me to sell, they were not making returns. So the business went down. So when the business went down, I decided to relocate. No, I just came to Asaba for the Christmas, then to know what to do. So I came. While I was there, I located the church I was going to, because I attend Living Faith Church. So I located the church here in Asaba and started attending. So at the time, people were blessing the pastor. So I didn't have anything to bless him. So I decided to make Zobo.
Wow.
So I learned making it while I was in Kaduna from his sister. So I said to make Zobo for him. So I made it and I took it to him. I chilled it, and by the time he drank it, he said, "Who made this Zobo?" I said, "He said, no, you got it from somebody." I said, "No, that I made it." And he said, "But you've been telling me that you don't have a work that your business with." I said, "Yes." He said, "This is business." I became angry. I said, "How can you say?" I said, "How can you say this is business?" He said, "This is business." He said, "Start making it." As of then, nobody knows about Zobo in Asaba. That was as far back as 98. Nobody knows about Zobo. So he said, "This is business." So I said, I can't do it. He said, "No, you do it." I said, "I can't." He said, "You do it." So I said, "How will I be justified after spending years in the high institution? I'm coming back to sit down and start making Zobo." He just looked at me and told me that you are proud. I said, "No." So he now told me, said, "If you don't start doing it, I will embarrass you in church." So that was what got me into making of Zobo. So I started without nothing. I still had the clippers, because when I left the high institution, I took my clippers and sold the other things. So I didn't have money then. I sold the clippers. I got some money. I bought things that I needed to. Then my sister also, who is married, who is abroad, also assisted me with some money. I bought the biggest deep freezer. So that was how I started making Zobo. And the Zobo became a blessing.
Wow.
From little selling as much as 10 naira, I graduated to selling 50 naira, 100 naira per bottle. And it became such a big business that I couldn't meet the demand.
Wow.
In some months, I make as much as 200,000 as profits.
Wow.
From Zobo. I had people that were selling for me. Then at the time, I delved into pure water. Because as of that time, it was only Popo that was making pure water, Dr. Popo.
Okay.
Pitan, that's Pitan Pure Water. He was only the one making pure water in Asaba. So I delved into pure water. But because I also decided to go into politics a little, I couldn't carry on with the pure water because I didn't have the machines.
Okay.
I was doing it locally.
Okay.
So the stress was so much because the sealing was done manually, not mechanical. So I had to drop the pure water and carried on with the Zobo. Then 2000, I got married. And the person I married coincidentally was my first worker. She was my first employee when I started.
When you started the Zobo?
When I started the Zobo.
Wow.
Because at the stage when the workload became so much, I had to employ people. So I saw the way she was working and the interest she had in the business. I took her, married her, and then when I delved into politics, she started on with the Zobo, and we made a lot of money out of it.
Wow. When you started doing the Zobo after the pastor's advice,
Yes.
What was your first production like, and what was people saying about it?
Okay. When the pastor told me that I should start, after getting the materials, I decided to, the first set I did, I sealed them. I decided to seal them so that any person who is taking it will know that there is no contamination. It's packaged like pure water. So I got plain water proofs. I put the zobo inside and I sealed it.
Okay, like pure water sachet.
Like pure water sachets. The first set I made was 50. I made 50 sachets. So I took it to church that morning. I took it to church that morning and the pastor was happy. He prayed for me and blessed me. The name of the pastor is Pastor Dominion. He's no longer with the ministry. He has his own church now. He prayed for me and said that God will bless me through the Zoom. So that same day, he announced it in church that Sonny has started making Zobo. That anybody who wants to buy should buy. But for that, for today, he's paying for all of them.
Wow.
That was how the business started. I started. Then because I was so active in church, I was an usher. I couldn't stay to be selling, so I got somebody who sells for me in church. Then in the town too, I got somebody who sells for me at almost all the parks we had in Asaba.
Okay.
Then we had a park in Abraka, Mogunogo, Iluzo Junction, that is Kokai. I had people that were selling and were making returns for me. And that was how the business continues.
So, are you still doing it up to now? Do you have people doing it, or you just
No,
pack it up?
at a stage, because my vision about the Zobo was that I wanted a situation where I could package it.
Okay.
Like the way they do Coca-Cola or other
Okay.
fruit drinks. So my sister then was working with Manchester Polytechnic abroad. So I sent the product. At the time she came with her children. The children loved the drink so much, so they started drinking. They were not drinking any other one. So when she was going, she took the products because I said I'm looking for a way that I can package it so that I can market. So she took the product to Manchester Polytechnic, their food department. And then he said after they finished analyzing it, they said it's a very good product. It has a very high content of vitamin C.
Wow.
But that they wouldn't want the producer, that's me, to use any preservative. That I should use sugar as a preservative. You know, as of that time, we had drinks like High Time, this black currant
Okay.
drink.
Yes.
So, but I didn't want that kind of drink. I wanted a drink that you can snatch off the shelf and drink.
And drink.
A drink that people can sell to you along the road, that you can, not the one that you get home to dilute. So I didn't want that type. I needed to find the kind of packaging that I can sell immediately. So I did all the tests I did. It wasn't coming out right. The shelf life for the products was not long. The highest shelf life I had was 4 days.
Okay.
But from the third day, it starts, or if it's not in a cold environment like the fridge or freezer, it starts fermenting.
Okay.
And when it starts fermenting, it becomes slightly alcoholic,
Okay.
which does not make it good for maybe the teenagers, the children to drink, or adults who don't drink alcohol. So I needed to keep it at the fruit stage without fermentation. So at a stage, the workload was so much on her. So one day she called me and told me, said, the money you are making is enough to run the house. That the stress of the Zobo is getting on me. That I can't concentrate in church, because a time came we only zeroed in the church.
Wow.
Because we couldn't meet the outside demand again, so we zeroed only on the church. So he said the stress on her was so much that she wants to stop the production of the Zobo. For which I said, it's okay. At least what we were making was enough to run the house. So that was how we stopped. And then, as of before that time, we had been able to teach some other people
Right, yes.
how to make. So all the things we had that we were using, we saw somebody who also had the interest to do, so we gave out all the things we used to make so to that person. That was how we left. But that does not stop us from making it in the house. We still do in the house for ourselves too.
And for visitors.
For visitors, yes.
Okay. You said that your wife was your first employee.
Yes.
So how did you toast her?
we started before I employed her, because actually it was the advice of the pastor. When he saw that the workload was getting too much on me, one day he called me. He said, the workload on you is so much. Why not employ some brethren from the church that will help you? So he was the one that suggested. He said, like that sister now in the choir. So I said, okay. So I took the step. But before then, one day the church closed. We were going home after service. She was everywhere, because when the service closes, you hear her with her friends making noise, shouting in church, and so on. So somehow, anytime the shouting starts, I'm always attracted looking at her. So one day as we were going out, when service has closed, she just came behind me and tried to frighten me because it was dark. Because then the service used to end 8 p.m. So it was dark. So I said, somebody as small as you cannot frighten me. He said, so we joked and laughed. So I now told her, I said, you don't know if tomorrow I'll be your husband.
Just like that?
Just like that. I just told her, because there was a statement she made, I can't remember.
Okay.
I said, you don't know if tomorrow if I'll be your husband. She just reacted and said, I bind you. That was her statement. So as of then, I didn't have the intention, I didn't have the mind to date her. But it was when we started working, as time was going on, and I saw the interest she had on the job. So I said, this person will do well as a wife. And then one day, I went to, because then she was not staying with her mother, she was staying with her auntie. So I went to the auntie's place and I told her, I said, I just didn't beat around the bush. I told her, I want to marry you. She looked at me and said, just like that? I said, yes, just like that. So before she could say any other thing, I said, I don't want you to give me an answer now. Give me an answer within 7 days. Go and think about it, go and pray about it, and give me an answer. So she went. I think that was the toughest time of her life, because all of a sudden she started growing lean. Because of that time, the mother told them that she wouldn't want her daughter to marry somebody from Delta State, especially Asaba. So now she's bringing somebody from Asaba to marry her. So it became difficult for her to tell the family. But when she told the other brother who is a pastor, the other brother said there's no problem. So he was the one who talked to the parents. So the parents agreed. It was after they saw me, they said, okay, because really I didn't grow up in Asaba. So they felt I didn't have the traits of some of them who they didn't know. So that was how she gave an opening and we started dating. Then she was calling me a schoolboy, because as of then I was very, very slim. So she thought I just came out from secondary school, knowing that I'd been out a long time. So that was how we ended up getting married.
Wow. In case you are just joining us, it is HBS show, History Behind Success. And my guest on the program is Pastor Sonny Ogbogu Badi. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's the HBS show with Lesson the Screen Goddess. History behind success of your role model. It's the HBS show with Lesson the Screen Goddess. History behind success of your role model.
You're welcome back. You're still on the program HBS Show, History Behind Success. And my guest is Pastor Sonny Ogbogu Badi. Okay, you are more with the youth.
Yes.
And they love you so much.
Yes.
Especially in Winners. There's no youth in Winners that don't know you. Not just know you, they love you. And so many of them sees you as the role model. What really attracted you to the youth? And also you've imparted so much on them. What attracted you to the youth?
The major attraction was that, let me say, it started from my wife. When we started having kids, she saw that I was so hard on the children. So one day she called me and started telling me, say you are far from these children, you come back, you always shouting, you're always looking at their negative parts, you don't look at the positive part of them. And so say I should try to get close to them. So I started working on myself, and then in church too, I tried to, because some of us as pastors, there's always this saying that pastors, you care for those outside more than you care for your family. You're listening to people more outside more than you listen. So we tried to balance it. So I began to listen more to the youths, because what we found out that parents don't do is that parents don't listen to youths. They want to lord it over them. You forget that you also, there was a time you were of their age that you felt the same way they are feeling when their parents are talking to them. So what do? You try to understand them. Let them explain themselves to you. Let them explain their situation. Let them explain their challenges. Then you know what is happening to them. So by so doing, I was able to get into them. I don't just come and start bullying them, beating them, shouting on them. No, you do something wrong. I want to know the reason why you did it. Some of them, it might be from their home. Some of them, like one youth that had a challenge, the mother came and reported that the son beat her up. So I was so infuriated. I said, how come? So I called the boy and I asked him. He said, Daddy, that's not what I'll tell you. I said, no, tell me. Because I was angry. I held him. I said, you must tell me. So he said, let the mother go. So I told the mother to go. So she told me, said, he has lost the father. And that if the mother had wanted to marry, she would agree. But the mother keeps dating people. That the last one he dated was somebody almost his age. And they were using it to mock him. And he has tried to speak to her. She has to be. So on a particular day, he got angry and pushed her. Not that he beat her up. So it was then I was angry. I called the mother. I said, look at what your son just told me. And I've told him that anytime you date somebody of his age, he should beat you. Because in the society where we are, if it's the Western nations, maybe it's for but in our society, we look at it somehow. It's not right for a mother to go after the son's friends. So with that, they understand when you get to them. You don't just follow the parents' path. Like another one too. The parents were not treating her well in the house. She had lost her mother, so she was living with the stepmother. So the stepmother was not, and the father didn't want to. Each time he tells the father will say, you don't want to adjust yourself to your stepmother, adjust yourself. But not knowing that this woman was not treating her well. Each time the man goes out, this woman will bounce on her. Do all manner of things. So the father did not understand until we came in and had to make the father understand. So the things with teenagers is that we as the elder ones or the older ones must come to understand them. So it's in understanding them, that's when they're able to flow. Certain things they don't tell their parents, they tell you. So that is how some of them now came to get close to me, because they know that if there's anything, even if they have done something wrong, I look for a way to protect them. But at the same time, while telling them that this thing is not right. Like some of them that were in cults, when we talk to them, we encourage them. Some will come to you and tell you that they threaten them that the day they leave, they will do something bad to them. So I now asked them, I said, everyone that wants to leave, come and meet me. I know how to handle it. So the ones that want to leave, they will come to you we'll go and meet their leader or their capone, whoever is their capone or their leader, we'll go and meet them. And then we'll bargain with them. This person has said he's no longer interested, he wants to leave. He said no, he has not paid his dues. So we say, okay, they went out for something, maybe he lost something that belonged to them, that he's owing so and so amount. We say, okay, calculate how much is he owing and what is he owing. When they say it, we'll pay. And after we have paid, we now tell them, this man is free from your hook. They will say, okay, so the day you touch him, all of us who were there before will come after you. And that is how we are able to free. We don't just pull them out, but we go and meet their leaders and tell them that this one is no longer interested, he wants to leave. He's going to somewhere that is higher, he has become a Christian, a born again. So he doesn't want to be part of you. So after talking with them, they let them go. At the end, they don't come after them. But we also tell the one that has left, it's not that you have said you have left, you have one leg is still there, you are still fraternizing. You are still greeting them the same way they greet. Every cult group has their pattern of greeting. So once you have left, you don't greet the same way. You greet the way they greet in the new place where you are now. So by so doing, they will know that you have left. For those of them who are into smoking, into drugs, we also talk to them. We say, yes, it might not be so easy to cut off drugs, to cut off drinking. But start by, if you take 3 bottles in a day, start by reducing it, maybe 2.5. Reduce to 2, 1. A time comes, you lose taste. And I told them, like me, I was smoking. How did I beat cigarettes? Somebody who stopped advised me, said, pull out. There is this foam at the stub of the cigarette.
Yes.
So the person advised me, say, pull it out and smoke the cigarette. So I started by pulling out. I pull out the stub, I will smoke. It's so easy. When you pull it out, the cigarette burns fast. The smoke filters into your mouth very fast. Then it's after some time, go back to the one that has that filter in it. When it goes back, it's like dragging air through something that is difficult. The particular foam in that stub will not allow you to take in the air. So when you are doing it, it becomes difficult. You won't like it. So you just want to go back. But you try to prevent yourself. So with time, you see yourself dropping the habit. So that was how some of us were able to beat some of our habits.
That's a very good one, especially the area of the court issue, going to meet the capone and all of that. What about the female folks? How do you handle the ones that are into maybe prostitution or something?
Yes, the female folks are much more easier to handle than the males because somehow they are malleable. You talk to them, you counsel them, and then you draw close to them. But at times, in drawing close to them, some of them might feel that you are developing affection and begin to look at it negatively. But you need to also caution them because that's where a lot of pastors make mistakes. They start doing what they're not supposed to do with their daughters. Taking advantage. So most of the time, like one that I handled when I was the Teens Church pastor, the mother came and reported that the daughter left the house for about 2 days. He has not seen her. So we started trying to trace the daughter. So I know the friends she used to work with. So I started going to them, and one of them was able to tell me that she's staying with one of these students in the university. That's my campus. So we now traced the house and we were able to get the girl. But the girl was angry, said she doesn't want to go back to the house. When I asked her, he said it was her mommy that asked her to do. Yes, mommy said he didn't ask her to do. So we now asked her, she now said the mother used to tell her every time there is a misunderstanding. He said it's your mates that are living outside. What are you doing in the house? Can't you see your mates? Can't you see what they are doing? So she decided one day, okay, now after the shouting, she decided to leave the house. And that was how she ended up in this place. So we now spoke with the mother. You don't treat, these girls are growing up. At this teenage age is the time they are trying to get a balance. If you push them more to this side, they fall out. You draw them more to yourself, they come to you. I say she has become a woman, she looks more like you. So you talk to her like your mate, not like a child. Because you will be surprised that most of the things she knows better.
That's true.
Than the things. So I said, relate to her as your mate. You see a mother sees that the daughter is developing, you call her and tell her, don't allow a boy to touch you. In school, anywhere, don't allow the boy to touch you. So you see them, a girl that used to play in class, she comes now, she's very quiet. She doesn't allow a boy to anytime a boy comes, you see her running. So then maybe the now stubborn boy will now say, you, what is wrong with you? Why are you running? She will start crying. And then she will go home that day and tell her mother that the boy has touched me. The mother says, it's okay. Then she will now watch to see what the mother told her will happen. Nothing happened. She will now start exploring because she has realized that the mother has lied. The mother didn't tell her the truth
of the touching.
She just told her the tip. So you need to explain to them. They know most of this thing. They watch it. Some of them have phones, their smartphones, and they watch these things. So you need to start explaining to them. So for the females, I sit them down, I counsel them, I talk to them like my mates. When you see me relating them, we talk as mates. So they open up to you. Some will tell you the challenges they have. Some will tell you that when they see a muscular guy, they start having feelings, especially when they see their chest. So you understand how they think. You now begin to reason with them. No, you will pass the stage that at this level, yes, your body is bound to react. But if you don't handle yourself, you will tilt to the other side. But when you're able to handle yourself well, you're able to move to this other side. So try to. It's just time you need. And then you encourage them when they have problems, when they have feelings they can't handle, let them feel free to come to you or call you on phone. A lot of them do call. You talk to them, you sit them down, themselves, and they're able to break through. So to go story, some of them are married today. So there are some of them that are males that are pastors today. And they are doing well.
Wow, that's a good one. Just before we go, your word of advice, because the society we are today, graduate, they hardly get job, and most of them want white collar job.
Yes.
We have a lot of them at home.
Exactly.
We have another set who has this the lands one job or the other.
Skills.
Skills, and they are not using it just because of the word, I'm a graduate, I want to work in government establishment and all of that. So I need a word of advice to them.
Okay, if I might take a scripture from the Bible. The preacher was talking in Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 10. He said, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, he said, do it with all thy might. Do it with your strength. It doesn't matter, like some people look at it, I can't sell groundnuts. I can't sell this, I can't do this. Because you're looking at yourself just like me then. I'm a graduate, I can't do Zobo. I can't do this. So, but you look at it, some people are doing it and they're making money from it. But you can do it better than those, because the people that are doing it don't have the knowledge that you have. You can add the things that they don't know that will make the things better.
That's packaging.
Exactly. Packaging. It's just like now, I see the people who are selling suya. If you go around the town, it's malams, most of the outside. But graduates can go into it, spice it, do it, make it fine. And you see a lot of people coming to buy. Those days when I was in University of Jos, we had somebody who was doing suya. The person goes to work, he was a civil servant. He will prepare the zobo, that is, put all the things he needs to put before he starts roasting. Then 4 o'clock, when he closes, he will now come and start roasting the suya. Before 6, the suya is finished. People come from Kuru, from so many places to come and buy. The man's suya does not stay more than 6 p.m. So what people do is people book ahead of time. God is looking for an avenue to bless you. If he gives you money like that, money just throws money. Maybe some people say you stole the money, or they won't know how you got the money. But God wants you, yes, he wants you to be doing something, no matter how small. Then what does he do? He commands his blessing through that particular work of your hands that you're doing. But when you don't have anything doing, there's no way God can bless you. So my advice is that let them not look at their qualifications. Let them not look at their ego. we had some years back in the church. One of our members approached a pastor. We have this pastor in the church who sells cars, Pastor Toya Kenneth. One of our members approached him and was begging him asking him for money that his family did not fed for some days. So he looked at him and said, "You complete man like you, so you can't do anything." He says, "Sir, I've looked for work. There is no work. I'm a master's degree." He said, "Master's degree, you can't see work?" He said, "Yes." He said, "If I give you work," he said, "Any work you give me, I'll take." He said, "Can you drive keke?" He said, "Why not?" So he told him there was a keke he recovered from somebody. So he came to his house, he gave him that keke, and they agreed on the amount he was to balance. This master's degree holder took the keke. Before the time he gave to him to complete the money, he had completed it. The pastor looked at him, he was shocked that a master's degree holder could do it. So he gave him back the money he had saved and asked him to take the keke and go and start his own. Today, the man has people who are riding keke for him. He has a car he's using. He's doing very well. So it doesn't matter your position. It doesn't matter your placement. But as long as you see that people are there doing it and getting money, you will do it better than them. So don't look at what is happening around you. No. It is you knowing that I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to get money out of it. I had somebody who was in church one time. He came to me, a youth. He said he wanted to start selling eggs. That all he needed was just, as of then, was it 6,000? I said, "It's just 6,000. I said, "Come on." I said, "Okay, 6,000. So I said, "How do you get the eggs?" He said he has an uncle that has a big poultry, so he'll be buying from him and selling. So I said, "Okay." I got 6,000 and give to him. He did that egg business for 2 years. His market was usually in the church and other places and some few places. He was able to save money. Today he's in US. He saved money, got a visa, and relocated to US. He's doing well. So whatever your hand is doing for now, it is temporary. It is just something to just keep you afloat. It's not something that is so permanent. While you are doing it and you're able to build up finances, you can delve into other areas that are more profitable. So, but the thing is that you must start something, no matter how small.
All right, thank you so much for your time on this program. We've come to the end of the program HBS show, and our guest has been Pastor Sonny Ogbogu Badi. Know that we had a swell time on today's episode. He said, whatever your hands find to do it very well, because you never can tell when the blessings of God will visit you. Like he told us about his story. He was a graduate at that time when he started selling Zobo. At first, pride wanted to spoil it, but thank God for his spiritual father then, his pastor, who encouraged him. It was like, if you don't do this Zobo, I'm going to disgrace you in the church. And secondly, he believed in him, believed in his pastor. He took that advice to heart. Today is where he is by the grace of God, and he has imparted in so many lives. Never give up in that business you're doing. Never give up in your place of work. Put your best in whatever thing you are doing, and also look up to God, because he has said in his word that I will bless the work of your hands. So whatever thing you are doing, bring God into it. Trust it. You will smile at the end. I am Blessing Ofumio. Don't forget to follow us on our YouTube channel, HBS with Blessing. Pick up your phone, your iPad, and type HBS with Blessing. Distance is not a barrier concerning this program. Wherever you are, I am there with you. So keep it a date next week for a fresh package.
Yesterday when they saw me as nothing.